Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Word with Kelly Scott Reed with Carina Solis out of it. Is it Georgia you're coming to us from?
Yes, Georgia, Villarica, Georgia, the most rural place you can be.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to have you. Really happy that you reached out. We like to showcase writers, independent writers, and you are very special because you are someone who, when I read your portfolio, your resume, I was super impressed with everything that you've already accomplished. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Carina, obviously. I'm 16 and I began writing. It started with my grandma because she would always be like telling stories and she grew up in Belize, so it's like a really interesting place. She would tell stories about like stealing mangoes or, you know, she told a story about a tiger once. She tells the most fun, fantastic things, and that inspired me to write. So I'd always be like clicking away on her typewriter, and that interest has continued to be with me as I grew up. And now we're here. Now I'm writing a chapbook, and now literary Twitter and everything.
Well, literary Twitter is really fantastic. You know, it really broadens your scope of who you come in contact with. That's how we met you, is
Mhm.
through that. And we may have never met otherwise. Now, your book coming out in the beginning of February is Daughter Song. And who's it coming out? Who's the press behind it?
The press is Bottle Cap Press.
Very cool. And how did you come to create a chapbook? What made you want to put something together like that?
Well, I had seen like a bunch of my friends on literature always coming with chapbooks, and growing up, I think every young writer has always been like, yeah, I want to publish a book when I grow up, just like dreaming of that. And as you get more and more into writing and read books by like Ocean Vuong, Edelman, like K Ming Chang, as you read all these amazing authors, it kind of inspires you because since you're admiring them, you kind of want to be like them. And since um the poems in my book Daughter Song, they all stem from like the same place, the same theme, and I thought it would just be interesting to see what I could do with in a book.
And what's your theme?
The theme kind of follows grief and femininity. Obviously, growing up today, there's such like strict body standards for girls, and I think that's something that I deal with a lot. So I wanted to write about that. And it also follows my family and like just growing up.
So you said Belize is where your grandmother was from. Do you have so you came your grandmother is here in the United States with you, or is she still in
No,
Belize?
she's in the United States. Fun story. My dad, um, what happened was they moved here when my dad was around like 7. They moved to the Bronx, New York, and it was like very chaotic. And my grandma moved to Florida, and my dad stayed in New York where my mom and him met. She's from Madagascar, so it's just like a weird mix of
Oh,
cultures that I'm from. And I was born in Hawaii, actually, not Georgia. And I actually just moved to Georgia. Born in Hawaii, moved to Florida, and like all of my formative memories are in Miami Beach, which is so bustling and so robust. You can see everything in Miami Beach. I miss it, though. I like having a room and having a house, obviously. So
that's amazing. And did you have a point in your life? So have you always written, or was there a point where you started writing like, okay, this is what I'm going to do? Or were you someone, even as a little one, who would just write down things?
I wish I could say it was one or the other. It's a mixture of both, as cliches as it sounds. Because I've always been writing, but it's never been something central to me. It's just something I do in my free time and be like, oh yeah, it's fun. But then during high school, there's this pressure to figure out what you want to be. And like I didn't even think of writing as something you could actually pursue. It seems like such a faraway thing since writing is such a hard career to get into. But I began writing like seriously during December last year. And during April, I had won like a few contests by then, and that inspired me to, take more action with that. So around like the beginning of summer, I started to write really seriously, started to get into publishing and meeting new people. So that's kind of how that now I'm want to major in English. So that's kind of how I got into writing.
It's funny. Do you ever do any like poetry readings in person, or are you strictly paper?
I feel like that is something I want to get into. Like slam poetry has always seemed so cool. I know a few slam poets. The way they write, it's subtly different from the poetry I write because they write, it's conversational and it's impactful and it's so loud. And that's something I do want to try. Just like I have a bit of stage fright, so that's something I'm gonna slowly get into.
Do you have any literary heroes that you kind of, well, you mentioned Ocean Vuong, who's one of my favorite.
Ocean.
Unbelievable. So I'm very happy we have that in common. I don't feel so out of touch. But do you have any other literary heroes?
Well, besides Ocean Vuong, who is obviously great, and I'm reading Night Sky with Exit Wounds right now, and it's so good.
Unbelievable.
I do like Warson Shire a lot. I was introduced to her from my mentor for girls right now, and she showed me her poems like Backwards and Home, and they just like they seem so similar to the topics I'm touching on, but she expresses them in such a different way. For example, in Backwards, like it's so experimented with it because like the theme of Backwards is about her losing her father and like going into this situation of abuse and with her mother and like family trauma, and then she says it a different way, and it's a bit more hopeful. Like she just reversed the lines, like no line was changed, she just reversed the like structure of it, and it was so interesting to see poetry be played with like that, since like growing up you probably are like, oh, poetry has to rhyme, poetry has to follow like this stanza form, and it's actually so diverse with what you can do. You can write prose poetry, sonnets, elegies. There's just so much you can do and explore in this one little 200 word thing.
That's very cool. Now um, you're, and I just don't love mentioning people's ages, but you are young. And I was always worried that poetry would be lost and writing would be lost with like a technological age. This is so encouraging for me because I had nothing else to do. When I was young, I had 3 channels. I had nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So writing just seemed like, okay, that was a way I could get in to a different world. Did you have a moment, or can you describe a moment in your life where you realized that language had power for you?
Um, well, to touch upon what you just said about writing being lost, I think we all saw that article where it was like poetry's been gone for like 100 years. I think we all saw that. And
Yeah,
there was like massive outrage on that because no, it's not. There's like a whole generation of new poets that on Litter, Twitter, Instagram, or haven't even started yet that are going to be the next generation of Ocean Vuong's, Ada Loans. For example, Amanda Gorman, she spoke at the inauguration.
mm-hmm.
And I think actually, if that was one, sorry, can you repeat your initial question?
Yeah. When you a
I got
time
so
when you,
lost.
I'm the same way. I'm like all over.
Yeah.
Could you name a time or an experience in your life where you realized that language had power?
Yeah, it was Amanda Gorman at the inauguration for me because, during that time there was COVID and I was being homeschooled and I really didn't do much outside of school. I would sometimes write, but it would just be like a fun thing. I just like write, it'd rhyme, it'd be whatever I wanted. And then I saw Amanda Gorman speak, and obviously she's a amazing young Black woman, and it was so inspiring to see her up there and everyone listening with such rapt attention to her words. And that's when I realized that language had power and also that people like me had power.
That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. I want to sit with that for just a moment. I don't want to move on yet. That's really awesome. I just saw her post something today about reliving, because it's like around the time that it happened.
Yeah, yesterday.
Reliving that moment. And I remember standing out in my yard, listening and just being absolutely blown away. First of all, by her youth, because again, I felt there was hope, and there was some forward momentum in the world and powerful voices. I really appreciate you bringing that up. Do you see any traps for young writers today that they could fall into that might hinder their forward progression? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, I've talked to other people about this, but being so young, sometimes you feel like you often feel this imposter syndrome, like can what I be saying right now be really that important in the grand scheme of things? I'm young and I do have a lot of inexperience right now. I haven't been into the real world where there's so much happening that I don't even know about in my little youth bubble. But I think we have to acknowledge that what we feel and what we write about is important and that it deserves to be heard.
What does literary success look like to you? Coming from your lens right now.
From my lens right now, well, there are only two paths for a writer that I know of. One, you get lucky and you get to do it full time. So you get to be like an Ocean Vuong or an Ada Limon, who's the poet laureate, and she's amazing. And the other is teaching. So that could look like Victoria Chang or Jericho Brown, and they do both. And literary success for me would, of course, to be stable. I think that's a goal of anyone. But I think it's to be happy with what you write and to be able to share it with others and be able to celebrate the words that each of you are saying.
I really can't wait to see what you do. I think you have an absolutely amazing ability, a grip on reality, as well as the hope of success in terms of you just have a real. When I saw the awards, you just said you started writing fairly recently, and I saw what you were. And awards aren't everything, obviously, but when I saw what you were doing, that's a big deal. Like that was not. It's hard in a very would it be subjective, where people have to look at something and everyone has to agree that it's great? It's very hard. So it's definitely difficult. Do you have any piece of writing, either that you've written or someone else has, that you find great? Any line you've written that you can recall? You don't have to recall it off the top of your head, but has there been a line where you've gone and seen your own greatness?
You know, that's a tough one because there's like so many great writers around you that sometimes you feel like you have to undermine your work. So like some of my favorite writers are young writers. So like I don't want to name any names, but there are quite a few that I look at quite often. I'm like, wow, I want to be like that. And I think, going back to your other question about what literary success looks like, it's about being someone that you look up to, but besides that, I don't have any line right now that I can think of. I think it's a work in progress. Like you'll just go back to your poetry and you'd be like, oh, that's not good. Like, feel, like with everything you write, there's always going to be some sort of feeling where you're like, it could have been better. So I don't have my perfect line yet, but I think that's something I want to achieve one day.
Yeah, I'm always cringing. I think it's so great when I first do it. Like I'll grab my husband and I'll like read it out loud. Listen to this genius. And then I look back and go, what was I actually thinking on this one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that.
And you're writing a first draft at like 10 p.m. and all the ideas come together and it looks so amazing. And you're like, oh my God, this needs to be submitted right now. It deserves to be in Kenyon and Bennington. And then you like go to the next day and you're like, what?
Exactly. Yeah. Do you have any like dream publications or publications that you really have aspired to get into that you hold kind of up there for you?
Not yet, because there hasn't been any publication I'm dreaming of. Everything as you're growing, I haven't really found my type of writing yet. It's ever changing, and fit for me, that means that fit is ever changing. Right now, I'm really into like the offing. Like I know some great pieces. Kaming Chang runs it, so that's like also amazing. But I know there's a lot of great authors in that. So if there were a dream publication for me right now, it'd probably be the offing or Tramp. Cool. I don't know. Or trans, that's also there because I know some great people published in that. And, the writing there is so experimental and wonky. It's just like, oh, these are weird, but these are good.
I sometimes have a difficulty. I'll read something, I'm like, that was amazing. And then I'll read it the next day and I'll be like, that was weird. I don't really know what I just said. I'm very, it takes me a minute to get the rhythm of things. Do you have in your, when you're writing, any kryptonite, anything that keeps you from writing, anything in your own world that kind of puts a block up for you?
I need music when I write. It's like so bad, but like actually it's either music, like it's either Taylor Swift. I'm so sorry to be like that. It's either Taylor Swift or silence. If there's anything else around me, it's not
I
gonna
love it.
like I have a Taylor Swift playlist literally called writing, and then or I'm in my room at 10 p.m. and it's completely silent minus my parents snoring. But besides that, yeah, it's not gonna happen. Any other music, even if it's like the sad music where it's like violin, yeah, writer's block immediately.
So Taylor Swift can reduce me to tears
Yes.
in the blink of an eye. I can't remember what song.
Tolerated.
I think it was okay.
Tolerated. It's tolerated. The correct answer is tolerated. That's
I'm just like crying my eyes out. And I have to like be careful of when I listen, because otherwise I'll have like swollen eyes. I think she's an incredible writer. And I can see why that would like be something that would feed what you're doing. That is interesting. Any other music that you're into currently? So I can like be up in the times.
I say I have the most a collection of basic music tastes, like there's obviously Taylor Swift, there's Harry Styles, there's Mitski, which I think every writer listens to. Every writer loves Mitski. Like I have a friend who listened to 75,000 minutes of Mitski, and yeah, that's a problem.
Oh.
The lights
just dimmed.
It would just dim. Hold on. Sorry for 1 second.
That's okay.
The lights
I'll put you back on.
Lights have decided to turn back on. Okay.
That's so funny. Oh, the dimming, the open.
Yes. I think it's a part of the scene, every writer needs, a little bit of drama in their life. And that lighting, the dimness, the little stop, it's allowing me to collect myself, and it's allowing me to, be part of the interview. Immerse myself.
Oh, you have a great sense of humor. Does that creep into your writing?
I don't get
really. Interesting. I was going to say, does it creep into your writing, your sense of humor? I think you're very funny.
I also think I'm very funny. So thank you.
That's awesome. No, that's great. I love it. Now, do you, besides writing, what are some other artistic endeavors that you, or non-artistic endeavors that you like to do in your daily life?
Besides writing, I am in drama, so I guess that explains everything I've said so far. I'm in chorus. I'm not that good, but I'm trying. And I read. I used to draw. I sometimes draw, but it's like, it's sketches, it's whatever. It's just when I need to I'm a doodler. Like my teachers all hate me because like I'm always doodling on tests. Like, and it'll just be like flowers or hearts. Sometimes it'll just be like random pieces of anatomy. And I think it's all part of the creative process. You got to let some of that creativity out, And I also, surprisingly for a writer, run.
Me too. I used to a lot, but then I got bad hips, so I just do yoga now. But I used to run like 10 to 15 miles a day. I was absolutely crazy. All my kids, my older two, my daughter's a track and field college coach. So it's kind of running is, I find it a creative process. I used to get all my best ideas running, and my brain would just start going and I'd create stories. What gets your, do you have a ritual that you do to get yourself in the creative mood?
I wish I could say there was a ritual, but the real life thing is I just put random things in my notes. I can show you right now, actually. It's so simple.
Yeah.
But
I'd love to see it.
Let's see. Like you probably can't read that. It looks like a white.
Oh, I can't. It's just white.
Yeah, it is just
Can you
white.
read something for me if you are feel comfortable with
They're really just random, like random words. Do you really want to hear my
that?
random
Yeah, I want to hear
words?
random words.
Okay, so breathless, fertile, afterthought, forgotten, red stew. I don't want to be awake right now. Navel, limbs. This is water. Moon cricket. I stopped meditating and started screaming.
That's great. That's great.
And I wrote a poem like 2 nights ago, and I just did the Kenyan Young Writers Winter Workshop. Like I just did that 2 hours ago, and it became a bad poem draft. And I think that's kind of all I tweet about. It's just literally me saying I have bad poem drafts. Please help me.
So what is that? What were you the Kenyan you said youth workshop?
Kenyan Young Writers Winter
Young
Workshop.
writers. Okay. And what does that entail? What are like some of the things that you do in that?
It actually just started today. The first meeting was today, but it's supposed to be like a generative workshop with like a bunch of young writers. So I met a few people today, like Caitlin, Abigail. Actually, probably shouldn't be naming names, and we're all getting mentored under for the genre is all loss is small loss, the anti-American elegy. So again, it's a little sad, depressing workshop as I think that's what I vibe with. But we during that we read a bit, we talked a lot since it was a new day. We had icebreakers, met some great people, and then we just wrote a lot. Like we probably wrote about half of it. So
That's really cool. I didn't have a lot of access to that when I was younger. Like there wasn't, we had like writers and books where I'm from. There's a one place where you could go and do workshops, but it was mostly older folks at the time. Like, so when I was young, I was like, I'm just going to write. When I'm in math class, that's when I would do all my writing. So I have like a notebook filled with stories that were supposed to be like the Pythagorean theorem. That's why I failed math because I didn't pay any attention to math. I was always writing. Um, when you write something, are you a good editor for yourself or do you pass it on to someone else to help you with it?
it's definitely both. I'll write something and, I'll obviously think it's great, wake up the next morning, realize it really isn't. Then I'll probably spend like the whole day looking at it and getting the help of my friends. So usually I'll wake up, look at the poem, cringe a bit, and then I'll just spend the whole day like reading and trying to like think of what I want this poem to be about. I'll edit and then I'll send it off to my friends as I go along, and they'll help tell me, what's good, what's bad. So it's a mixture of both, I would say.
That's interesting. I used to go read my poems to my parents and they would go, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I showed my brother a poem once, and he was like, it was a poem about, God, what was the poem? It was called like I Wish We Were Paperweight, and it's a poem about going insane. So he like didn't understand it. I mentioned random things. I had made a reference to Greek mythology through Cassandra. I said that my mom was pale as an egg. There was like a lot going on that was not understandable in it, and I don't know why I wrote it or how I wrote it. It got published, thankfully. Like and he did not understand. Like we had to go through like a 5 to 10 minute thing where I was trying to say it. He was not understanding it, and then I gave up.
It's kind of like explaining a joke. Once you have to explain it, it's done.
Yeah, it's just supposed to be naturally beautiful. You're not supposed to get it. You're just supposed to enjoy it. You don't have to understand it. No.
Go along for the ride. Along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
What day is your chapbook coming out?
For now, the date we have is February 6th. So that's a Monday.
When will it be available?
February 6th.
Awesome. And where can we find it?
Bottle Cap Press, their website is where I think it will be out for now. And hopefully on Goodreads with an ISBN. So
great. And also, where can we find you? Give your socials so people can look you up.
I hope they don't find me because all I'm posting is terrible. But you can find me on my website, which is like carinasolis.card.co. with C's, no K's. My name does not start with a K. And
Sorry,
I have to specify that. I know no one who's ever spelled it with a C the first try. So I have to specify that. And then Instagram and Twitter are Carina Soul with an underscore after them. So
awesome. I really appreciate you spending time with us today. Honestly, this was really great. You're a natural. I can't wait to read what you have coming up.
Hmm?
I can't wait to read what you have coming. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you. I got an acceptance the other day from Heavy Feather, and it'd been such a dry spell of acceptances. It'd be like full submittable hates me. Submittable hates me. Like since September, nothing, nada. Okay? Yeah. 4 months. 4 months where submittable was like rejection, 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 rejection. And then I gave up. So I was like, why don't I just submit to magazines I'll never get into? And that was like Rattle, Dialogist, the fancy ones that like no one gets into. And I got into Heavy Feather and then I cried about it for like 10 minutes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending the time. It's been awesome.
Thank you for loving me.